Hello, hello, and welcome to the PvA Nightly Rundown. I'm your host, Luke Croft, and this is the nightly gaming news show where I run you through all of the gaming news that you may have missed throughout the day so that you don't look like a freaking idiot at the water cooler tomorrow. Yes, it is Thursday. I am one day, this time tomorrow, I will officially be on vacation. My first vacation in quite some time. It's been a while since I've had like a legit week off of work where I wasn't having to worry. I wasn't like in between jobs. I wasn't still running a business. It's been years. So I'm very much looking forward to this coming up week. Gonna be chilling, doing some planning for the stream, doing some planning for the podcast, doing some planning for the website. A lot of cool things on my horizon. Tonight is going to be a little different than normally. We do the nightly rundown and then we'll play a game. Tonight we're just going to be ending the show after the nightly rundown because I'm meeting with the always visually stunning Larry Hunt and freelance gaming journalist Cody Melloquine in order to this Gatorade made a weird noise when I opened it. In order to discuss some future plans for the podcast. So hopefully we'll have some cool news coming up soon on that front. So trying to end this right at 10 tonight. We're going to try to get through all the news. There's a lot of news, but I also just want to hang out. Talk about my new background. Talk about how delicious Gatorade Zero is. I was very hesitant because G2 or whatever it's called is disgusting. But this Gatorade Zero stuff's pretty good. But yeah, we do this live every single weeknight, except for Wednesdays, at 9 p.m. Eastern time over here on twitch.tv/PVA Radio. If you can't catch it live, you can watch us also on youtube.com/PVA Radio the very next morning. A little bit of housekeeping here at the top. This week's episode of PVA Radio, our weekly gaming podcast where we each of us three co-hosts brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of the week to the table. Then we have an in-depth discussion about it. It is live. We talked about the Nintendo Switch Lite. We talked about Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. We also talked about Sean Murray's weird quotes about how game makers need to be quiet and just work on their games. Stop talking to your communities. Just make your games. So a lot of really great discussions. That's on podcast services everywhere. Also on youtube.com/PVA Radio. I'm interested if you're watching over here live or if you're watching on YouTube, if you would be interested in having this show in an audio format. It's never going to be formatted in such a way that makes it conducive to audio. We watch videos, we kind of goof off, I interact with the chat. It's not really a we don't really do this in an on-demand way. I think the best way to watch this show is by tuning in live, but if you are somebody who regularly tunes in live and chats along, but you may miss a day or two here, but you still want to make sure you're caught up, if you guys are interested in it being on our podcast feed, I am definitely open to the conversation about it being on our podcast feeds. Just let me know in the comments or in the chat, wherever you may be hanging out with us. So, also, next 2 weeks, pretty exciting stuff. We're going to be having some special guests coming by PVA Radio. Next week, we're going to have Andrew Nimsgren from Project eSports / Popped Off coming over to hang out with us. And then the following week, we are going to have Jarrett Wilson from Team Chat Podcast co-hosting as well. Larry's going to be out of town over the next 2 weeks. And so that's another thing we're trying to do. We're trying to get more guests who are doing cool content creation things, podcasts and live streams to come on over to the show and hang out with us. So yeah, be on the lookout for more of that stuff as well. All right, guys. Enough housekeeping. Let's jump into it because I do have a hard out at the very latest 10. Not hoping to, but may try to end it around 9:55 just to give myself a second. But all right, let's jump into it with what released today. We actually use Kotaku's This Week in Games. Because they just do a really great job. Let's go over what came out yesterday and what came out today, see if there's anything that we want to check out on YouTube, and then we'll move right through this. So releasing yesterday, we had Sol Serpa on PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Doling's Invasion, Xbox One. Grasscutter, Mutated Lawns on Xbox One and Switch. May have to check that one out. Emoji Charades on PC. Godhood on PC and Mac. And then Dr. Mario World, Android and iOS. I actually believe that ended up coming out on Tuesday. So that's the mobile Dr. Mario World game. So that's everything that released yesterday. Releasing today, we had Tiny Metal Full Metal Rumble on Switch and PC, Blazing Chrome on PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, Eagle Island on Switch, PC, and Mac, Red Hot Vengeance on PC, Skulls of the Shogun Bonafide Edition on Switch, Professor Lupo and His Horrible Pets on Switch, Doodle God Crime City on Switch, Nelly Kutalot, The Foul Feet on Switch. I imagine that's an owl game of some kind, or some sort of, bird. Dead in Vinland, True Viking Edition on Switch, Metaloid Origin on Switch, Way Out on Switch, Vector Wars on Switch, and Cyverior Delta on Switch. All right. I'm almost 30 years old. I'm a homeowner, so we got to check out this Grasscutter game. So let's hop on over to YouTube here. Check it out. Grasscutter Xbox One trailer. All right, let's see if we can find. Okay. Grasscutter Mutated Lawns Xbox One release trailer, a minute long. Perfect. Here we go. Oh gosh, we need. Oh yeah. This game looks shitty. The world is in danger. There's a herd of kids walking towards your lawn. Is that guy mowing the lawn with a unicorn that's shitting out a rainbow? Video games are weird, man. They are weird. You gotta kill the boss. These lawnmowers make no sense. There's an actual lawnmower. There's your Toro, self-propelled. That's just a cart. Oh man. Oh, I was gonna say they had no idea how to end the song, so we did the 90s fade. All right. Whatever. I mean, I guess that's cool. All right, guys, let's jump into the news. We got a lot of it. Halo's co-creators, one of Halo's co-creators has opened a new studio, and we've known that, but they finally revealed what their next game is going to be. So this is Mark Leto, again, a Halo co-creator. This is, I'm getting this story from Eddie Mackich over at GameSpot. It says Halo co-creator Marcus Leto's new studio, V1 Interactive, has finally revealed its first project. Pop-ins. This is why I don't use a lot of stories from GameSpot, because it's pop-ups after pop-ups. And autoplay videos as well. Has finally revealed its first project. It's a sci-fi first-person shooter called Disintegration. The teaser trailer and key art, both of which you can see below, depict a mega weapon of some sort. Disintegration is set to be fully unveiled during Gamescom next month, so keep checking back with GameSpot for more. So here's the key art. This, like, I don't know if this is supposed to be like a mech kind of thing or a space, like a space fighter, I'm all out of words. I was on calls, no joke. I was on calls at work today for what felt like 3 hours straight. It was horrible. And I was like leading the calls. So I've reached my limit of words, I think. And I'm about to hop on another meeting and another call. Something I'm a lot more passionate about though, which is our podcast and shows. All right, let's watch this announcement trailer. So this is what the key art is. It's this like space shuttle. But it looks like something that somebody just like lays in and pilots. Oh, there we go. Now it's looking a little bigger. Nice. August 19th, so a little over a month away for that. Also, look at me, big nerd, getting all these NBA 2K League things. Oh, good. The Celtics won. I had to stop watching with like 3 minutes left. So yeah, that game looks cool. A little over a month, we're going to get more information about it. It's cool, I think, when game creators kind of stick to their roots and then make something that's kind of adjacent to what they're known for. And, you know, this being a first-person sci-fi shooter, they're known. This guy's a known quantity. He's been behind one of the biggest sci-fi first-person shooter franchises of all time. So I think it's safe to get excited about this game, and I'm excited for Gamescom to see more of it. So not a ton to say there. I just thought that was really cool. You see the word Halo and new game on a story, and you got to click it, right? All right, next item on the list. We're kind of booking it through. But Nintendo is taking pre-orders now for the Switch Lite. This is from Nintendo Life, from Ryan Craddock at Nintendo Life. It says, if you're hoping to grab Nintendo's latest console, the Nintendo Switch Lite, all for yourself, you've certainly come to the right place. Pre-orders are now popping up all over the place, and we're gathering them for you below. At the time of the writing, all three standard colors are available from numerous UK retailers. US retailers seem to be lagging behind. Some listings below aren't live just yet, and I think they're starting to go live. Although US fans will soon have the option to pick up the fancy Pokemon Edition console. We'll make sure to add to the list, yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, we've got Best Buy, we've got Amazon, we've got Game, which is to the UK. So, all kinds of different ones. I'm sure we're going to start seeing them popping up at GameSpot and Walmart and all of those places as well. So, this news broke yesterday, so I didn't get a chance to talk about it on a PvA Nightly Rundown, but we did talk about it in depth during PvA Radio last night. I don't want to rehash a ton of that conversation, because if you want to get all three of ours full thoughts, you can go back and watch that episode. I honestly think that the Switch Lite is a brilliant move. For them to kind of marry their home console to their handheld and kind of sunset the 3DS and say, we're just going to lean into the Switch, and that way they're not having to split resources out to say, all right, this studio over here is working on 3DS. These people are trying to broker third-party partnerships for 3DS, while these are working on Switch third-party partnerships. It brings it all under one roof, and I don't know, you get high quality console games coming to a dedicated handheld system now, which is something we've had for a couple of years now that the Switch has existed. But I think this is a little more like understandable for parents who I worked at GameStop, right, for a long time, and not a long time, for a little under a year. And there were a lot of parents who came in whose kids' only console was like a 3DS or 2DS, because they're like, well, we don't want them taking up the television in the living room, and they don't have a TV in their room, so they just play on handheld. And so this is something really understandable, and it's also a great either like, and this is a point I made on the show last night, and I'll make it here again. This is going to serve as two functions, I think. It's either going to be one, baby's first console, like, oh, hey, our kid is growing up, they want something of their own to be able to play video games like mom or dad. Let's buy them this Nintendo Switch. It has a lot less breakable parts. Like, that was the whole thing with the 2DS, right? Was it doesn't have this hinge on it that kids are going to be able to break. It's all like one solid piece. And I think that that's a similar thing here. You're not ripping out the JoyCons. You're not putting the JoyCons on the wrong way, which I, as an adult human being, have done before. This is a lot less breakable. I think it's a lot more understandable. It seems like there's a lot less parts to have to buy for it than you would for necessarily a regular Switch. And so it's either going to serve as baby's first console, or it's going to serve as... Andy Gardner says there's one problem. Very interested to see what he believes the problem is, because I read a lot of arguments about like what people think about why people think this is a bad idea, and I've yet to find one that I really agree with, but I'm interested to hear, definitely. All right, I'm all ears, and I'll go through the second purpose while you're putting that in. And I think the second purpose is going to be somebody's second Switch console. Like, hey, I've got the Switch that, you know, it's at home and my kids, like, they like to play on it at home. And so if I have to leave the house, I don't want to take it with me. So I'll buy this. Like, $200 is not a terrible price point for this console, especially knowing the quality and the library of games you're going to be able to play straight out of the box with it. You know, you're not waiting for a ramp up because it's new. If they mess up that control panel, then what? Okay, so you're saying, like, if they break a button, like if a button goes bad, I mean, I think at that point it's just that's every handheld console's problem, you know. Like, same thing if it happens to a 3DS. 3DS doesn't have detachable controllers. Like, you could say the same thing about the Switch. You could say, like, well, what happens if something happens to the screen on the Switch? Like, you know, if something's going to break, something's going to break. So to me, that's not really, except the price tag. I mean, no. I mean, a 3DS, brand new 3DS was $200 when it was coming out, $250 even. And so, yeah, it's a hefty price tag, but that's always been the case with handhelds. This is around the same price point as all brand new handhelds have always been. So, and I just know a lot of kids, when I was working at GameStop, a lot of kids, the only thing they owned was a 3DS or a 2DS. And so, yeah, syrup. and I honestly, I think that's why this is a good thing for kids, because you can be like, all right, I'm sick of you gumming up the big boy Switch over here that I play on, like in the dock, and I don't have kids, but I've got friends that have kids and who would rather just hand their kid their own thing rather than them messing up the thing that they own. Now, one thing that I am a little upset about, the only thing I've been upset about through this whole thing, is we've got this sweet ass D-pad right here. And they've already come out and said they have no plans of putting these on the JoyCons for the regular Switch. Everybody has been begging for these things. And there's people that have modded their Switches. There's people that have bought third-party JoyCons in order to have this D-pad. And so it's like you have whatever you need, unless these, like, I guess I figure these controllers that like, they're not JoyCons because they don't detach, but these side panels for the controller are probably a little smaller, so maybe it's a little harder to, like, just work it into production. But I wish that D-pad was coming. Andy Gardner says, I don't have kids, but I have a lot of toys. Yeah. And so, you know, like, I've got nieces and nephews, you know, and my nephew came and spent the night with me on Friday last week, and I was like making sure his hands were clean before he was, like, touching my keyboard or touching my controller and stuff, because I was like, I don't need you gunking shit up. He had, like, spent all afternoon running around over at my sister's house, and I was like, hey, before you do anything here, you have to get in the shower. Like, you have to take a shower before you can sit on my furniture, sit on my gaming chair, touch any of my stuff. So I know that. I know how that feels, and if he could have just brought his own Xbox controller, I'd have felt a lot better. So you going over the XL model or Plus? So they haven't officially announced an XL model. They did submit paperwork to be able to replace a couple components in the standard Switch, which I don't have in the show notes because I'm not really technically minded enough to know how big a deal a new processor or whatever is going to be in it is going to make. I know it's going to make it better, obviously, but not the technical know-how to know how it would. But if they were going to have, if they do announce an XL or like a Plus model that has a better screen, maybe even a bigger screen, I think I would be on board for that, as long as it maintained all of the the features of the regular Switch. I'm curious to see if the regular handheld controls will adapt. I'm not sure what you mean by that with the regular handheld controls, but for me, I think this is also interesting. And again, we talked about this at length on PvA Radio last night, but I'm interested because with them marrying their home console to their handheld, like, this much, you know, there was always before now, like, oh, well, we have the 3DS, and so handheld and console gaming are like kind of two separate things for Nintendo. Now they're not. But I think we're going to reach a point where they want to diverge from this strategy at some point. And how do they do that? Like, does the Switch just become their handheld moving forward? Oh, if it's XL, is it bigger with the original controllers adapted to it, or will it be small? I think that they would have to. All right, I'm going to say this. But understand that we're talking about Nintendo, right? I would expect that they would have to consider the fact that people have poured a lot of money into the accessories for the Switch. And so if they were going to come out with some sort of iterative step in like a bigger direction, they would have to figure out how to do it in a way that would get their current accessories to work on it, right? And we're just getting to that point in the world too, right? Like Xbox's whole like forward compatibility push, where they're like, every accessory that you own for the Xbox One is going to work on the next generation of Xbox, because they're asking people to drop, $200 on an Elite controller, or $120 on a custom, like one of these awesome Design Lab controllers or something like that. But we're talking about Nintendo, who was like, hey, we're going to put out the new 3DS XL. Doesn't come with a charger, guys. Charger sold separately. It's a handheld console fully powered on battery that does not come with a charger. So we're talking about Nintendo. So I don't put anything past them. Dude, I worked at GameStop when that happened. It pissed me off too, because there were so many parents that would come in and buy this thing. I'm like, does your kid have a 3DS? Well, no. Do they? So they don't have a charger. Well, yeah, but I'm buying a new console. It should come with a charger, right? It doesn't. And the parents that shop at GameStop aren't smart enough to realize that GameStop does not make the Nintendo 3DS, and we do not decide what comes packaged with it. So I was constantly like, and we were always sold out, right? Because of both new and used 3DS chargers because of that console. And so I was constantly like having to call the Walmart across the street, like, hey, you got any? Yeah, and it makes you as a salesperson look stupid. I was so frustrated with Nintendo constantly, because Nintendo just has weird ways of going about things, like, not to mention just the naming conventions that they have. Like, okay, we've got the 3DS, we've got the 3DS XL, we've got the new 3DS XL, we've got the 2DS, we've got the 2DS XL, and they're all different products. And you have to understand what they are. And then it's like, all right, here's a couple games that only work on the new 3DS XL. Well, I just bought a 3DS for my kid 6 months ago. Is that not a new one? No, they just came out with a new 3DS XL. Like, people think the Xbox One was bad naming. Those are people who have never looked at a Nintendo console. Never. The Nintendo Wii and then the Wii U. Oh, man. Literally the same shit, except you buy 3DS if you want constant migraines. Yeah. I've never been a 3DS guy. My wife owns a 3DS. I bought it for her when we first got married. She got her job as a teacher here. I bought it as like a congratulations present, because she had wanted to play like Ocarina of Time and some other things on something. So I've probably played a combined like 2 hours on her 3DS, and that's all of the 3DS time that I've ever had. Now I am the one who mainly plays on the Switch. Yo, your fiance's a teacher? Shout out. Nice. What grade? My wife is a 4th grade teacher. So I joke and I say that I'm married to Summer Lauren right now. And Summer Lauren is very different than school year Lauren. Although my wife's going through grad school right now, which is stressing her out. So she hasn't been able to like sink fully into Summer Lauren mode. And I feel bad for her about that. But early childhood, so I'm sorry she's a babysitter. Yeah. My wife taught 1st grade for a few years, and then moved up to 4th because she's wanted to work in administration. So she was like, I gotta have experience across grade levels if I'm gonna try to lead across grade levels. Forehead. Big brain play by my wife. All right, guys, let's move on. So you can pre-order your Switch Lites. And I'll be honest, I'm a sucker for this shit. Like, I don't know if I'll buy it. My first thought when I saw it was like, man, that would be a cool gift for my nephew. All right, guys, let's talk about this new Call of Duty game mode, this 2v2 firefight mode that they revealed today. Don't do it. I like the old one still. I would still keep my original Switch. But I think my nephew's 9 years old. I think he would love that kind of Switch. Like something to just play Fortnite and all that stuff. Oh, it's all good, Andy. Andy, this show is far less structured than PvA Radio, which I believe you've tuned in for at least once. Like, so it kind of goes wherever the chat takes us. I do have a hard out at 10 o'clock tonight because I have a meeting. But yeah, let's talk about Call of Duty and this new 2v2 firefight mode that they revealed today. Get this buffer in while I introduce this. So this, yeah, I've got a video. I'm going to show it here in just a second. So this mode is actually pretty cool. It takes place in these really, really small maps that are custom made for this game mode. When you load into each round, you are given all four people are given the same random 4-item loadout. So you get a primary weapon, a secondary weapon, a lethal item, and then like, I can't remember, like a secondary item like flashbang or whatever. Yo, that's Graffiti. What up? I was a huge COD fan back like Modern Warfare 2. I had a squad of dudes that I ran with, and we probably poured like over 1,000 hours into each of those games. But and also World at War. But once we got past Modern Warfare 2, and especially this generation when we started moving into like wall running and all that sort of shit, like I fell out of it. I couldn't keep, it wasn't that I couldn't keep up. It was just like not anything that appealed to me. I jumped a little bit into Call of Duty World War II when it came out, and I enjoyed that, but I don't know, there was just something that felt a little off about it. The map designs in Call of Duty have gotten a lot smaller so that there's not as much like running around without action. But what I always appreciated about the older Call of Duties was the fact that you weren't on top of one another. Like, and so, which is funny because this mode really appeals to me, but it's really fast. So you're playing first, I think it's first to 6 points. So I'm just going to let this roll and we can talk about it because, so what you see here is essentially the map. And so this also has some interesting like esports potential, which is where my mind always goes first and foremost. He just shotgunned that dude right in the butthole. So yeah, and I think it's every 2 rounds your loadout switches. So right now they've got the FR556 and this pump shotgun. But I think that at some point, dude, I love esports. So Andy, I know you are a Rocket League guy. What other esports are you into? Because I've gotten into so many. Like, I'm huge into Overwatch League. That was my like introduction to esports, which I think is a great entry point for anybody who's into traditional sports and is trying to get into esports. I'm into League. I've been getting into Dota, watching Dota, not playing Dota, and I've been getting really into NBA 2K League. Like, I was watching that in the minutes leading up to me doing this show. So anyway, this reminds me of the map. What was that map called? Oh, so right now everybody's got RPGs. RPGs and this little submachine gun, flash grenade. So only Rocket League hardcore, but I'm waiting for me for some shooter esports, dude. Rainbow Six Siege is awesome, and I think I would love to see this in an esports context. But yeah, what you see here is essentially what it is. Like, this map reminds me of I think it was called Container in the first Modern Warfare. Like super small, but it's only 2 people on the map rather than like, oh, it's 6v6 in this map, which is what I feel like every single Call of Duty map has become. And I'm exaggerating to an extent, but yeah. I think, like, what's really popular in multiplayer modes now is just like what is quick to get in and out of, and what is something that like translates to an audience, right? And this is a mode that I think would stream really well. It would make a great esport, and it would stream really well because people can immediately understand it. You know, there's no like great depth of strategy except for positioning. You're not fighting over what guns to use. Everybody's got the same loadout. So I think that this mode could really take off, and I think Call of Duty's really been trying to figure out, like, okay, we tried the Battle Royale thing with Blackout. It was popular for a short time, but they didn't support it well enough, number one, and number two, people just kind of started to fall out of it. But I think Call of Duty really needs to retake their identity as innovators in the multiplayer space, and I think this game mode really shows them as innovators. So I don't know. I'm into it. You guys just got a chance to see it. You can check this video out if you just search for the gameplay reveal they did today. There's another 7 minutes of this. But what are you guys hanging out in the chat, or if you're watching over on YouTube, you can drop it in the comments. What do you guys think of this game mode? Oh, actually, let's watch this round because they get snipers in this round, which I think is really interesting.
Oh, here we go, baby.
I have not watched this far in. I watched it to the RPG rounds.
Oh, they're right side.
All right, never mind. We didn't get to see much.
He's like deep right there, spawn. One stop left, you saw?
Yeah, this is funny. And this would be awesome to watch.
Oh, Jackie.
This would be awesome to watch with like pro Call of Duty guys. Quick scoping each other.
Where are you, Papa?
All right, if it's just going to be them walking around a map, we'll move on. Because I've got 30 more minutes and a few more stories I want to get to. So what happens in overtime? Oh, I was wondering what happens when it gets to the bottom of overtime. All right, so that's the new Call of Duty mode. Looks pretty tight. Looks pretty cool. I don't know. I think I'm in for the new Call of Duty game. Return to Modern Warfare. I'm interested to see what they do with the story for the single player campaign, and this new multiplayer mode looks pretty tight, so I think I'm in for it. Next item on the list. Square Enix has no plans to release Final Fantasy VII Remake on any other platforms than what have been currently announced. So this is from Michael Beckwith over at Game Rant. Says Final Fantasy VII Remake is undoubtedly one of the most anticipated titles of this generation, and fans are eager to get their hands on what will only be the first of what could be several installments of this seemingly massive game. All right, I'm gonna stop here for just a second. How many Final Fantasies are there? Well, there were at least 14 that got trailers at E3, and that's not even really an exaggeration. I'm gonna stop here for a second. I'm almost done using Game Rant stories because, number one, they bury the lead every single time. Every time they write a news story, they bury the lead a paragraph down. Number two, whoever is in charge of editing or giving writers no edit permissions seriously needs to reconsider their job, because every story I read from them has weirdly worded sentences or things like I don't know what just happened outside my door or things like installments with one L. So whoever's taking their writers off edits before they should be needs to have I should have a conversation with. Anyway, and they need a remake. So the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think, makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm not a big Final Fantasy VII fan. I'm just a small town pizza lawyer. But Final Fantasy 15, the most recent Final Fantasy game, took a more Western approach to combat. It's not turn-based, it's much more action-oriented. And they were trying to appeal to a much wider audience. With Final Fantasy VII Remake, first of all, it's I'm just the best darn bird lawyer from that Scafidi. I'm an expert in bird law. Final Fantasy VII is one of, if not the most important video games in all of video game history. And even as somebody who isn't a Final Fantasy fan, I recognize and understand that. And there are people like me who have always been turned off from playing Final Fantasy because of the combat system. Well, now Final Fantasy at large kind of has this new look, at least in their main numbered iterations. And yet Final Fantasy VII, I don't think received quite the commercial success that they were hoping it would, or even the critical success that they were hoping it would. And so I think for them, going back and remaking Final Fantasy VII, but doing it with this more Western action styled combat, to them, it's a good decision because it's like it gives people an entry point that they know is important that they may have been turned off to come try our game out. And I'm interested in trying out Final Fantasy VII Remake. What I'm losing interest in is the fact that it's coming in these episodes and we have no idea how far apart these episodes are going to be. So I'm like, well, I'll probably just wait till all the episodes are out, and then by that time, am I even going to care anymore? But so I understand the approach. But anyway, the article goes on to say, so far the game has only been announced for PS4. But it seemed like Xbox fans were thrown a bone yesterday when the official Facebook page for Xbox Germany posted a video confirming that the unannounced Xbox One version would release on the same day. Sadly, in less than a day, Square Enix has shut that idea down. In an official statement to VGC, the publisher reiterated that Final Fantasy VII Remake would release on PS4 next March, and that it has, quote, no plans for other platforms, end quote. This does sort of match up with previous statements it made last month where it said that the game would, quote, debut first, end quote, on PS4, but at the same time, the wording does suggest that it would come to other platforms at a later date. I don't know. I still don't think that this is necessarily going to be a PS4 exclusive for all time. I don't think you use words like debut first if there wasn't some sort of at least like exclusivity window in place, right? To where you could say, we're releasing it on PS4. We're going to see how it does. We've brokered this 1-year exclusivity with PlayStation. But at the end of that year, we're going to release it on the Xbox One. Think back to like when Tomb Raider was announced. Rise of the Tomb Raider. When Rise of the Tomb Raider was announced as being an Xbox One exclusive at Gamescom in, what was that, 2015, 2016? And everybody was like, well, is it going to come to PS4 eventually? And Phil Spencer was like, well, you know, he kind of like danced around it, said some things, but essentially he was like, it's a timed exclusive to Xbox. It's exclusive for now to us, because it makes no marketing sense for Phil Spencer to say like, it's exclusive for 365 days and then they can do whatever they want with it. And I think that there's probably something in that exclusivity agreement that Sony makes companies sign to say, hey, like, yes, this is going to be a timed exclusive, but we just want to make sure that you're not giving people like, you're not going out and saying like, oh, it's going to be on PS4 but in 6 months it's going to come to Xbox One as well, because it partially defeats the purpose of exclusivity. So I don't totally buy that this isn't coming to Xbox One, but I think their caginess around it makes a lot of sense. So, all right. Next item on the list. The Dark Pictures Anthology. I'm very, very, very excited about this, guys. It's going to have 8 games. So if you guys don't know what this is, I'm going to read this article from Joe Screbbles over at IGN. It says, the Dark Pictures Anthology, which opens with Man of Medan this August, is currently planned for 8 games with a release schedule of 2 per year. Dark Pictures is a multi-game horror anthology created by Until Dawn developer Supermassive Games. Every game in the anthology will be a new story in a new horror genre, with the only major aspect tying them together being the Curator, a mysterious figure cut from the same cloth as Rod Serling in The Twilight Zone, or the Crypt Keeper in Tales from the Crypt. In an interview with Supermassive CEO Pete Samuels, I asked what the plan for the Curator is. Quote, we have an arc in mind that plays out over 8 games. He's really the only consistency across the anthology. Everything else from a story character perspective, we want to be a surprise, end quote, guys. I am so in for this. I am so in for this that I'm going into ASMR mode. This game is going to be great. Until Dawn was great. And the fact that they are making a game, they're going to make an anthology of games exploring all kinds of different genres of horror. We're going to have 80s campy horror. We're gonna have, you know, like psychological, probably heavy gore horror. We're probably gonna have like zombie horror. We're gonna have hauntings. We're probably some demon possession stuff. Like all of these different creature horror. Like Until Dawn did a really great job of tying tropes together and also playing on a couple different horror genres, but really like tying it all together in the like campy horror. But to see them just like do something really creative where they're not being bound to each other, like to make each story make sense in its own, like in an overarching universe, I am so excited about this. And so for the next 4 years, we're going to get 2 horror experiences from Supermassive Games every single year. I am so in for this. Does that sound sexy when I do that? Should I do that more? So yeah, 8 games. It's going to be good. Buy it. Buy it. You won't be disappointed. Next item on the list. Guys, there's a new Splinter Cell game coming. This is from Game Rant, from Sarah Fields. It says, Facebook is a massive company that has arguably dominated social media and more than dabbled in gaming, creating several VR headsets over the years. You love it? You love the ASMR? Do you want me to... According to a new report, Facebook wants to take its gaming side of the business to a new level and has accordingly penned deals to bring Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell to VR for the first time. You know, whispering's really bad for your voice. When people lose their voice, they're like, all right, guys, I'm going to whisper now. It's like, no. Whispering is worse for your voice. It's not like the natural way we were designed to talk. Anyway, so yeah, Facebook and Ubisoft have come together to work on VR with Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell. I think this is a cool idea. Ubisoft has a really interesting approach, I think, to emerging technologies, to where they're like, we're not going to jump headlong into these things. We're going to partner with Google Stadia. We're going to partner with Facebook Gaming and VR and their VR division, like, and let them bring our experiences to them. And I think that there's like some benefit to that. You're not splitting out tons and tons of resources to make something happen that may not necessarily yield the most fruit. But on the other hand, you're really trusting people with your IP to not do something outlandish with it. And I imagine there's probably checks and balances that are in place where Ubisoft has to sign off on these things. But I think that there's always this struggle that it's not going to feel like something that's made by the Assassin's Creed team or the Splinter Cell team if it's being handled by other people. So yeah, I don't know what this deal looks like. Splinter Cell VR, whatever. I'm not really big into VR, and the idea of like diving into a haystack from when I'm in VR, like I'm getting motion sick just thinking about it. But I'm sure there are some people that are excited about this, and more power to them. But for me, I am out on the VR front. I'm not really into it. Tried it. It was okay. I tried it. It was just okay. All right, I'm going to go grab a peach to bite into real quick too, because that's apparently something people do. And they like rub their mics. I don't get ASMR either. ASMR and VR, I just don't understand. I'm old. That's Scafidi. Do you like ASMR? Like for real? And I'm not going to judge you if you do. Some people do. I don't get that tingling feeling. I get like a skin crawling feeling, which is similar but very different. All right, guys. It's super awk. All right, good deal. We're on the same page. I would have judged you harshly if you enjoyed. I'm just kidding. Last item on the list for tonight, guys. There's an ultra rare Pokemon card that sold for $60,000 and then got lost in the mail. This is from Ryan Craddock over at Nintendo Life. The Pokemon trading card game is a very serious business, especially for the most determined of collectors who are willing to spend thousands and thousands on the rarest cards available. Recently, a transaction such as this took place, but the whole thing has gone horribly wrong. eBay seller Pokemon Place had a trainer number 3 card in their possession, which looks like this. A card which was only given to the 3rd place winner of a specific 1999 Pokemon competition in Japan. As you can imagine, this is one of the rarest cards ever to be released, and last year someone bought it for a whopping $60,000. All right, guys, I'm going to stop here for a second. There's one of these that exists that was given in one very specific situation. This is not one of the rarest cards ever to be released. This is the rarest card to ever be released because there is exactly one of them. There may be other cards that there are only one of, but this is still the rarest. And I don't know, would you consider like, oh, they only made one of them, but it was completely destroyed? Like, would you still consider that to be rare, even though it would be impossible to get it? I don't know. We're arguing semantics here. Anyway, the card was sent using the United States Postal Service and was insured for $50,000. It was delivered with an assortment of other items but never arrived at its destination. Speaking to Polygon, Pokemon Place said, quote, "My responsibility was to ship the card to Aramex, a middleman company that then ships the card to the buyer. The tracking information I have is with registered mail and shows tracking and a signature. Aramex claims they haven't received it and signed for a bulk lot," end quote. Pokemon Place says that as the lot was signed for, they cannot claim the insurance for the missing card. The whole event seems highly suspicious, but according to Pokemon TCG expert SM Pratt, I don't know who these people are, both the buyer and seller did everything they could to make the transaction work smoothly. SM Pratt believes that the postal services are completely to blame and has theorized that someone may have stolen the card after finding out its value. The thing is, with a card as famous as this one, reselling it publicly would be impossible. If someone was to list the card online, the Pokemon collecting community would instantly find out who stole it in the first place. You can check out SM Pratt's thoughts below. Oh man, you gotta hate when you do everything right and it still goes wrong, which is exactly my entire experience with living. Not that I do everything exactly right, but you try to handle things the right way. Like, this would be, if I spent $60,000 on a Pokemon card, this is what would happen to me. This is exactly what would happen to me. Everything would hit the fan. So, anyway, I always like to end on kind of a weird story, and that's where we're going to end it as far as the news goes. I do want to bring back one of our new segments, and I don't have it in full force yet, but I came across an article that I thought should be featured in it, and that is Today's Terrible Takes. And so this is a segment where I go through all of the terrible takes that I've come across. You'll sell a card for $60,000, says That's Graffiti. What card am I getting? I've got some cards up here. Well, no, I have a card up here. I've got this signed Chipper Jones card from SP Authentic. It's got the certificate of authenticity in the back, and then I've got Chipper Jones. It's got a signature on it. This is number 122 of 303 in this series. It's probably not worth anything. $10. 303. Chipper Jones has more kids than that. All right, today's terrible takes. There's this article from my old stomping grounds on Twinfinite. And, all right, I'm going to say this at the top here. I am not doing this to put the writer on blast. I have read a lot of Grayson Morales' stuff. I have enjoyed the majority of everything that I've read from him. However, this article completely misses the mark for me. All right, guys. I told you I've read a lot of terrible takes regarding the Switch. And I've got some images saved on my phone that I just forgot to upload. All right. I've got some on my phone that I forgot to upload. Maybe I'll bring them on tomorrow. Also, That's Graffiti. I haven't forgotten about you. I'll shoot you a text. I've been like insanely busy, man. Insanely busy. All right. So this article is titled "The Switch Lite Should Be Way Cheaper Than $199." And again, I read a lot of terrible takes on the Switch, and I'm going to put this in this category. Let me find the paragraph. All right, so he opens up with this argument about how it doesn't have a feature where you can put it onto the television, blah, 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 blah. It's missing HD rumble. It's missing the IR sensors. There's no kickstand. We're going to pick it up here. It's a great way for people to have access to the amazing titles that Switch has to offer, such as Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, just to name a few. But looking at all the features that are missing from the Switch Lite and its smaller screen size, I think Nintendo could have definitely dropped the price point a little bit more. Now, he says drop the price point a little bit more here. All right, you're gonna see editor Luke come out right now. So I work for Twinfinite. Generally, the writer is responsible for titling their article. That is not the way it works at every single outlet, but at Twinfinite, at least in my time there, that's the way it works. So you title your article, the Switch Lite should be way cheaper than $199. Now, if something was going to be a lot cheaper or way cheaper than $199, where would you guys put it at? I would say at the least, for it to be considered way cheaper, $129. Would you consider $149 to be way cheaper? And then what would be a little cheaper? Like, I feel like $50 less, I guess that's 25% off. Maybe that is way cheaper. I would just say that it should be cheaper. A little bit cheaper to me would be like $179. But anyway, the title of the article is that it should be way cheaper, and then he argues that could definitely have dropped the price point a little bit more. So I'd have sent that back and been like, hey, let's get some consistency. That's Cafidi says 25% isn't way cheaper. Anyway, I don't want to get ticky-tack here. I want to get into the meat of his argument. He says, so if you take a look at the Switch dock itself on online retailers, it costs $89.99. That's a lot of money for a measly piece of plastic that lets you charge your Switch and output an image to a television. If you round that up, that's basically $100. The difference of the cost of the Switch and the Switch Lite. So he takes the price of the retail price of the dock and then rounds it up over 10% and says, let's just call it 100. And there you have your difference. And it's like, all right, well, let's keep going. He says, I think that the Nintendo could have easily released the original Switch with Joy-Con and all without the dock and call it a day. There was no need to make the screen smaller and make a bunch of games inaccessible and or hard to play simply to make a different model. Since Nintendo decided to make the Switch Lite inferior to the original Switch, why isn't the price point much lower? I think, he does give a price. I think $150 would have been the perfect sweet spot for consumers and would have made way more sense in the grand scheme of things. If the dock itself is almost set a price of $100. The Switch Lite should have just been a dockless version of the regular Switch. Taking away the Joy-Con and ability to play on TV takes away what the Switch is all about. All right. This is actually a good summary of a lot of the bad arguments that I heard about the Switch. This whole idea that like, oh man, it's the name itself is like, says it's to be able to switch from TV to handheld. And okay, I get it. That's the like way that it got its name. That's what it's meant to be. But we all knew there was a handheld version of this that was coming. It's been rumored for years and years, not years and years, for months and months. Like, I get that, and I don't take much umbrage with it. If you want a Switch that can play on your TV and detach the Joy-Cons, you just buy a regular Switch. Like, it's not that hard. It's not like they did some massive upgrade to the Switch Lite. Like, they didn't say, oh man, it's got double the battery life, or it plays games in 1080p in handheld, but you can't do it on your television and it doesn't, and you can't detach the Joy-Cons. Like, no, in every way, shape, and form, except for the half hour more battery life you're going to get with the Nintendo Switch Lite, it is a either same specs or downgraded version of the Switch. So I don't get this whole like, oh, it's missing features that already exist in another Switch that I can buy. So that doesn't rest with me. The big thing that I think with this argument of like, oh, well, the dock itself cost $89, and so shouldn't that just take $100 off the price? And it's like, that's not how pricing works, man. It's just not. Like, that's not how it's ever been. It's the same way with like the Xbox One. Phoenix Heart 11 says, yeah, not a buyer for Switch Lite. I'm really curious, and look, I'm not either. I own a regular Switch. I'm very happy with my regular Switch. I don't really have a reason for a Switch Lite. And are you currently a regular Switch owner, Phoenix Heart? That's Graffiti says that's kind of what Microsoft did with the Kinect, right? In a sense, it's what they did, breaking out the Kinect. But even then, right? They reduced the price by $100 for the Xbox One when they took the Switch out. But then in order to buy the Kinect that was broken out separately, it was $150. So again, like, it doesn't make sense to say that, oh, they removed this one thing, that saves them this much money. They should have just dropped it, whatever the retail price was. All right, so Phoenix Heart has a Switch. And I think that this is like what I've been seeing across the internet, right? Is like, I already own a Switch. I'm not interested in the Switch Lite. And my point would just be like, you're not supposed to, unless you're in the market for another Switch. Now, I do think that we're going to eventually get a Switch XL or a Switch Pro or something that's, like higher spec. But, and for me, like, that's the thing that would get me on board. The Switch Lite is more of like a baby's first console. And I'm not saying that in any kind of like pejorative way. I think like the first thing I saw when I looked at it, it was like, oh man, my 9-year-old nephew would love something like that. And they did that on purpose, right? Like, that the first image that we got that they released of it, that everybody saw, like in the Kotaku article, things like that, it was a hand holding that bright yellow one that looks like a Fisher Price toy, right? And so the first thought that they wanted people to have was like, I'm gonna buy that for my kids, I'm gonna buy that for my niece, for my nephew, for my little brother. Like, that console is made for kids as an entry point, or it'll be somebody's second Switch console, right? Got my one at home, maybe I've got a family, they all like to play on it, I want one I can take on the road with me, so I can just pack it in my bag and go. I'll leave the main one at home so the kids can play on TV, and I'll take this with me. And I think they have a ton of heat mapping as well. Look, if you don't think data is being collected off of you on everything that you play on, then you're fooling yourself. And so Nintendo clearly has statistics that are saying like, okay, the Switch is played in docked mode, and I'm just making up numbers here, 20% of the time, right? And so why not put out one that doesn't have that feature? Oh, we've noticed that people only play the Switch with the Joy-Cons detached 33% of the time. And it's like, okay, well, that means there would be a market. There's obviously a Venn diagram where there's an overlap of people who never play it docked, who never detach the Joy-Cons. This is who this is for. It is for the people who are in that segment who would be like that, who don't currently own a Switch and are looking for something cheaper than $300. So yeah, the only reason, and again, I think that think what you want about the price point. I don't think that this argument really holds a lot of water that this writer on Swimpin is making. And I'm not putting it in today's terrible takes to lambast it like I do the social media posts that we're generally showing in this segment. I'm saying it just because I feel like these are arguments that I've seen a lot being made. And to me, they don't carry a lot of weight, because if these are the things that you want, something already exists in order to meet those needs. And that's different than like when the Xbox One was announced as being all online, and people like got raised Cain about it, and they were like, what if we don't have good internet? And Xbox was smug and assholes and was like, well, then it's called the Xbox 360, because that was clearly like an inferior piece of hardware to the Xbox One. This isn't that case, right? The Switch Lite in every way, shape, and form is inferior to the regular Switch. And so saying like, well, if you want those features, just buy the Switch, I don't think is smug. I think it's just what it is. Yeah, maybe for people who want a cheaper bare bones kind of thing, it could easily get younger people hooked. If you don't have internet, you suck. You're right. That's Kaviti. Because it means you can't watch this beautiful, beautiful show that I have to end right now. I'm sorry to end it so abruptly. Normally I'm here, a couple more hours hanging out, but I got a meeting at 10 for this stream and for our shows, and hopefully some exciting news coming out of that. I am leaving. This has been the PvA Nightly Rundown. We do this every single weeknight at 9 p.m. over here on twitch.tv/PvA Radio, except for Wednesdays, because that's when we do our show PvA Radio at 9:30. If you can't catch us live, Guys, go drop a subscription over on youtube.com/PVA Radio. We got all kinds of content that's coming over there as well. We're starting to break out our PVA Radio episodes into smaller segments as well. So if you just want to hear what Cody had to talk about, you'll be able to watch that. We're also breaking out Two Truths and a Gaming Lie over there. So lots of great stuff. If you're over here on Twitch, make sure you hit the follow button. If you haven't subscribed yet and you have your Twitch Prime subscription, feel free to drop it for me. I'd greatly appreciate you get that sweet calf emote that Scafidi just dropped in the chat. And if we get 6 more subscribers, we're going to be able to unlock some more emote slots. And I've got some cool stuff planned for those as well. Anyway, guys, let me read Phoenix Heart's stuff right here real quick. It's like they're Nintendo are trying to create a second-class gaming for people who would like to spend little. Yeah, and that's what a lot of companies do too, right? That's what we've seen with Xbox. Like, hey, here's the all-digital edition of the Xbox One, you know? Or like we're seeing with Stadia, where it's like, hey, drop $120, you have everything that you need to stream. So, and I think that there's a market there for that. So anyway, guys, I appreciate everybody who stopped by to hang out tonight. That's Scafidi, Andy Gardner. I appreciate you, Phoenix Heart 11 as well. Until tomorrow night, same exact time, and we'll make the show extra long tomorrow to make up for today. We love you. Goodbye.